How long have you been working here?
I've been here for 2 years. Before that, I owned another store in New Providence that went out of business because our building was bought out.
Mm.
And then Chris, my partner, uh, what his second partner was leaving, and so they brought me on to take over.
How long have you been interested in comics?
Uh, I think there's a picture of me when I was 3 reading a Chippendale comic book. So I think it's safe to say I've been reading comic books most of my life.
I was gonna say, what got you interested in comics? But if you're that young,
I just think it's a good. It's the same thing I try to get other kids interested in comic books. Uh, it's social reading. It's not required reading, and you got pictures, and there's something great about reading a picture. Reading picture books. People go straight for the comic pages in a newspaper. There's something relaxing about it, and I think that's a nice entertainment.
yeah. So what's your favorite series and why?
Oh, I have a lot of favorite series. In the superhero world, I think um, probably the Green Lantern series right now. It's got some of the best writing and some of the best art, and DC's really putting a lot of focus on it. So on the superhero side, I'd say Green Lantern. On some of the reality stuff or nonfiction stuff, there's a book from Image called Morning Glories, which is sort of this evil prep school, and these kids trying to find out why they're there and really what the purpose of the prep school is. And that's been a big favorite of mine right now.
So what about your favorite graphic novel and why?
Watchmen. uh, it still holds up years later. It's the perfect graphic novel. It tells a story in the perfect graphic sense. Every panel, every page, every word, every action, the whole book just works. And I guess it's a misnomer to say what's your favorite graphic novel because Watchmen has become a graphic novel, but it was originally in the floppy form.
Mm-hmm.
So it has become my favorite graphic novel. And I'd be hard pressed to figure out what my second favorite graphic novel would be.
Yeah, that was
But it's the granddaddy. It's
that
a
was the
perfect
one that
book.
got me into wanting to read graphic novels. We have to read it for this course too. So who? I guess you already kind of answered, but who's your favorite comic book character?
Now that's a different question because my favorite comic book character has always been Dr. Fate.
Who that is?
He's actually a Golden Age character that got brought into the Justice Society, and he was when I was reading him in the 70s and the 80s. He was a backup story in the Flash comics. So I was a big fan of the Flash as well, and Dr. Fate was in the backup. But he has the helmet of Naboo. It's this mystical helmet that gives him magical powers and all different things like that. So he's sort of a mystical Egyptian style character, but he's got this really cool gold helmet and a big cloak, and he always was just a good draw for me. I don't know, it was just kind of cool. It was sort of like a knight and a superhero all in one.
So then, if you could be one superhero, who would it be and why? Would it be him or someone else?
That'd be cool to be him. It would also be cool to have some superpowers that would work in my daily life. Being Flash would be awesome because I could get everything done. Jamie Madrox, the Multiple Man, can make duplicate copies of himself to do everything he needs to do. That's always good. You need a little extra help. You just get a dupe. So I'd probably say speed or duplication powers would be now on my
Those would be nice.
big powers.
So then I kind of just assume this from you talking about Marvel or DC.
I'm going to put that story to bed. And here's why. Back in the 80s and probably earlier, there was a very big distinction between Marvel and DC. Marvel was the realer characters, and it was really more about the um, the alternate persona of the character. You know, it wasn't about Spider-Man. It was about Peter Parker. You know, and DC on the other side, those characters were like gods. They were like a pantheon of gods, and it was really about their powers and their abilities. As the writers and artists started mixing up between both groups, it really just there's a lot more similarities between them. You know, some depending on what writer or what artist is telling the story, they have a lot more similarities. There are characters and stories in Marvel that I love. There's characters and stories in DC that I love. A different writer coming on could totally destroy the love of that story or comic and make something else great. So I think I switch back and forth. You know, right now I'm really digging Green Lantern, and you know, over on the Marvel side, Spider-Man is starting to come back for me. You know, I was really angry about what they did about Spider-Man a couple years ago, but now the book is starting to grow on me again, and the writing was really good. So I'm falling in love with the character again. So there is no Marvel or DC. There's just both.
Right. And then also, just because it's my favorite graphic novel, but what do you think of Dark Knight Returns?
Dark Knight Returns is great. It certainly has a look that has transcended other mediums. I mean, you look at Frank Miller's movies, and he's made his movies look like that book, and it started, that style formed in there, and I think you look at Sin City and some of his other stuff, and you can really see, the effect, and that is one of the reasons. You talk about the Marvel and the DC thing. Mm-hmm. Here you took Batman, who is unto a godlike character, and you put him in this really street level, really gritty. Yeah. Really became about Gotham City and about what it was to be Batman. So that was made it a lot more like Marvel.
Mm-hmm. Just tell me about the comic industry now and how it's doing.
Comic industry now, on paper, has been decreasing. Mm-hmm. To the tune of 10% a year. It's not a single comic book has had circulation of over 100,000 issues last month. DC is trying to attract new readers and reinvigorate the market in September by rebooting. Well, they don't want to say reboot, but they're relaunching their entire line. With 52 new comics, all starting at number 1, with slight to major changes in the characters, try to attract a new audience and make it accessible to them. And I think what happens is, some characters and books have been going on for so long that you need to, look on Wikipedia or read an encyclopedia to learn about that character, and so it's hard for me as a retailer, when somebody comes in and says, I want to read a book, what should I read? Well, it's really easy for me to send them over to a graphic novel because it's contained. But with a comic book, you have to look at, how far into the story is, how many issues back do you need to read to get into it. So DC's saying, hey, we're going to start these at 1. We're going to make we're going to start wiping out some of that history that's mired us down. And we're going to say, here's a jumping on point, and learn about the characters and grow up with them again. So hopefully we'll see new readers coming into the marketplace.